Welcome to Wellywood Wargaming, where the grim dark never sleeps. Crack open a bottle of wild snake and spark up a low stick as we take a journey down Underhive.
The moment you've all been waiting for, Ash Wastes Nomads are back in the fold of Necromunda with their own book, The Tribes of the Wastelands. Thank you to Games Workshop for sending me a copy of this early so I could get my head around some of the new stuff in here. I love Ash Wastes Nomads. I do think they are one of the coolest looking gangs in the game. Their lore is absolutely fantastic. And one thing I will say, I'm not going to get into too much detail on it, is the lore in this book is some of the best lore in any Necromunda book to date. It really, really is good. So if those sort of lore keepers out there, you're really going to enjoy this one because all of it is sort of like encounters from other people. You don't get any actual factual Ash Waste stuff in here. It's really, really cool the way that it's written and the way that it's constructed. So on the lore alone, this book is worth having. There are some new additions. There are some things that remain unchanged. And what we're going to do today is dissect the new stuff, have a little bit of a talk about it. But if you want the full and complete and updated breakdown of how Ash Wastes Nomads operate in Necromunda, go and check out my new gang guide, which is also out as well. That has everything you'll need to know if you want to play Ash Wastes Nomads, either in the Underhive or the Ash Wastes, so get involved. Okay, like I said, this video is just about the new stuff. We're not going to be focusing on anything else. I've already mentioned the lore. The lore is really, really good. Take my word for it. This is worth getting just for the lore if you're into that stuff. I am the kind of person that does skip over that and go straight to the new rules though, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. So, the Shadar Hunter. This is a new unit for Ash Wastes Nomads. We saw it on the Warhammer community and they look fantastic. They are, I think, the nicest Ash Wastes Nomads miniatures so far. And they are what looked to be a close combat proficient unit for an otherwise very shooty and long-range gang. So a very welcome addition, a very similar sort of vein to the squat prospectors. They got the Exokin, which again are fairly close combat orientated. Some people don't like them, some people love them. I think there's always an opportunity to squeeze them into your gangs, and that's the same here with the Shadar Hunters. I have to say though, out the gate, when I first got to this page, I had nothing but the feeling of slight disappointment with the stats, with the weapons, and with how these guys operate. That said, I have sort of thought about it over the last week or so, and I do quite like them now. The models are amazing, and that alone is worth playing them. But let's get into what the actual new unit is. It is a specialist unit. So we don't have what we had with the Exokin, where we had a champion and a prospect. We have neither a champion or a prospect. We have a specialist. So this is a specialist kind of fighter, similar to the Vansar Tech Hunter, if you think of it like that. They do have the Gangfighter X rule, which means that you can have as many of these guys as you like, and they've got to make up at least half of your gang. So you could either have these guys or gangers, or both. It's completely up to you whether you want to go full close combat, full shooty, or a mixture of both. But these guys are most definitely pure close combat. So the Shadar Hunter is 65 credits. They're a specialist, as mentioned before, and the stats are as followed. They're nice and fast, which is good, movement 6. Their weapon skill 4+, their ballistic skill 4+ as well. So the ballistic skill, not a problem on a close combat unit, but a 4+ weapon skill on a close combat dedicated unit feels like a bit of a letdown to me at first glance. Again, I'm saying this at first glance. I was a little bit let down by the stats here. Strength 3, toughness 3, wounds 1, initiative 3+, and 2 attacks. So they do get 2 attacks, which I think sort of makes up for the fact that their weapon skill is absolutely average. Bear in mind as well, they've got movement 6 too, and when we get into the weapons, they've got some versatile weapons. So 2 attacks with quite a lot of threat range is pretty good. We're going to get into these special rules in a second as well. The mental stats are leadership 7+, cool 6+, willpower 7+, and intelligence 8+. So they're not the smartest guys in Necromunda. The special rule that they have here, in fact, they have 2 special rules. The first one is tools of the trade. So they're like any other sort of specialist or champion. You can have multiple loadouts for these guys, multiple equipment sets, which is pretty cool. You're not really going to use that much though, because, you know, they're only using close combat weapons that they can have 3 of anyway. So here's the special rule, Wasteland ambushes. During an Ash Wastes battle, it does specify Ash Wastes, which again, I think is a little bit disappointing at first glance. If this fighter would be deployed as part of a gang's starting crew, they may instead be placed to one side. At the start of any end phase after the first, they may then be deployed anywhere on the battlefield at least 9 inches from any enemy model, along with any of their exotic beasts. The spine worm comes to mind there. So it is very similar to the Delak Nachtgul, which is a very, very good special rule. It's better than Infiltrate. You can really play mind games with people. It's not 6 inches, it is 9 inches, which is, again, not a problem when you have a movement 6 fighter who generally has some versatile weapons as well. It's definitely scary. The main problem I have with this, of course, is that it does state during an Ash Wastes battle. So here is the main point of discussion, really. Are arbitrators going to let these guys do this in the Underhive? Same question for the Sky Mantles as well. Are arbitrators out there letting Sky Mantles be used in the Underhive? I think that's up to you, the community. I would say that Ash Wastes Nomads are fairly unplayable in the Underhive rules as written, unfortunately, and that also extends to the Shadar Hunter in this case, with that special rule specifying Ash Wastes only. So that initial sort of disappointment aside on those guys, they do get some skill access to Cunning as a primary and Combat and Wastelands as a secondary here as well. And the Hunter equipment list is quite small. I'm not going to go through all of the stuff here, but they also get access to the Anthromite Spine Worm for 45 credits as well. 0 to 2 of those on these guys. So you can have an absolute ton of Spine Worms. We're going to talk about those in a second, but all in all, the Shadow Hunter, I think when you look at it on paper at 65 credits with, a special rule that can only be used in the Ash Wastes as written and average stats, they're just not very good. And sadly, I think that's a bit of a shame. However, I've done some list building, I've done some thoughts around it, and in my head, I'm already thinking of allowing these guys to do this in the Underhive. Does that make them too good, though? Is there a sort of midpoint here? I'm not really sure. This is why I think it would be great if the community discusses this below, because some big decisions need to be made from arbitrators here, because otherwise Ash Wastes Nomads are literally only Ash Wastes Nomads. They won't be played in the Underhive. Again, though, that's fine. That's kind of what they're for. But if you want to play them in most gaming groups that don't, do Ash Waste rules, which is quite a lot of them, to be honest, then you're going to struggle without the arbitrator's consent. Before we get into the weapons, we're going to go and take a look at the new pets. The first pet that comes in the Shadar Hunter box is the Anthromite Spine Worm at 45 credits. These have stats of 6 for movement, weapon skill 4+, ballistic skill 6+, strength and toughness 3, wounds 1, initiative 3+, and 1 attack. They then have an 8, 7, 8, 9 for mental stats here as well. They do have some cool special rules as well. For 45 credits, I think they're actually pretty good value. Small target, meaning they're -1 to hit when they're out in the open and stuff, a bit like a giant rat, I believe, or something similar. And they also have burrowing as well, which is the same as the Psychoteric Worm, I believe. So these guys can actually burrow under, terrain and stuff and pop up the other side and bite you. They also have Cunning as a primary and Agility as a secondary here, and they are armed with barbed fangs, which again, we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail soon. So the Anthromite Spine Worm is exclusive to just Shadar Hunters. You can't take it on your leader, you can't take it on your Watchers, you can't take it on your Stormcaller, but you can have 2 of these things on each Shadar Hunter. So they're pretty good. And they're not game breaking, but they're decent, and you can have an absolute swarm of these things if you're running lots of Shadar Hunters. One exciting thing we've got here is the addition of 2 other pets as well, and the first one is the Unbound Hellamite. Now this is a really cool idea actually. It's like, when you're riding a horse in a cowboy movie and you've got a string of other unbound horses with you. That's basically what the Unbound Hellamite is here. It's only 30 credits, the stats are not great. They're movement 8, weapon skill 5+, ballistic skill 6+, strength toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 3+, attacks 1, and 8, 7, 8, 8 on the mental stats there as well. The main thing that these are for is that they are a spare mount. So the special rule here, spare mount. If an Unbound Hellamite's owner is equipped with a Dustback Hellamite and placed prone and pinned whilst within 1 inches of a standing and active Unbound Hellamite, they may make an initiative test. If the test is passed, the unbound Hellamite changes its status to prone and pinned instead of its owner. So it kind of acts like Nerves of Steel, but with an initiative check, and it means that you don't fall off your Hellamite. It's pretty cool. I quite like it. You just jump onto the other one, kind of. But yeah, it's a pretty cool one. I can see myself using this quite a bit in Ash Wastes games, but again, I don't really play Ash Wastes games, so this is really situational to that. It has the Mighty Leap skill as well, and yeah, that's what they're for basically. 30 credits to give you an initiative check to remain, standing and active basically on your Hellamite when you're riding one. So pretty cool. I quite like it. My favorite pet in this book, though, is the Ashwing Hellamite. This is a flying Hellamite type that is just a really cool idea. Again, these things are 30 credits, so they're very cheap for what they do. The stats are movement 8, weapon skill 4+, ballistic skill 6+, strength and toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 2+, and attacks 1. They've got 9, 8, 9, 10 for their mental stats. So terrible mental stats, but whopping movement 8, flying with average weapon skill there as well. It's pretty damn good. Special rules for these guys are flight, of course. Don't need to explain that too much. Long leash, so 9 inches maximum instead of 3 inches on this thing. And they have a really cool and new mechanic called the Ashwing Lure here. This is a basic action for the owner or pet owner to do, which is deploy lure. And this is a basic. So place an Ashwing Lure in base contact with this fighter for the remainder of the battle. Any Ashwing Hellamites this fighter controls treat the lure as if it were the owner. So the Ashwing Lure may be moved as if it's a loot casket and may not be targeted by attacks. Once an Ashwing Lure has been placed upon the battlefield, all Ashwing Hellamites it controls may be activated in a single group activation. So you can plop this somewhere and just put it in the way of stuff. It's really cool. I love the idea of this. And then the owner can just walk away and the Ashwings will stay there. So very, very cool. And it just has a different... It's a different thing. We haven't seen anything like this for pets, and I really do like this. So agility is the primary skill access here. Cunning is secondary there as well. And they have toxic mandibles as well, which, as you can imagine, are toxic. Some other sort of cool additions that we've got in this book is we have hired guns. They've kind of expanded what you can get. So you can now get Nomad Outcasts, which are Nomad exclusive Hive Scum. They follow all the same rules as normal Hive Scum, same stats, same cost, 30 credits, and they get access to a lot of the Nomad gear, not the Hive Scum gear. So bit different, but really cool. These are for campaigns and scenarios that give you free scum and stuff like that. It's just so that you don't lose out as an Ash Wastes Nomads player. They've also incorporated Nomad Harriers as well, which are basically bounty hunters. We have 3 different profiles for them. All of the same rules for the bounty hunters, and the hiring fee is the same there as well. Pretty cool, and these guys are basically Nomad exclusive bounty hunters. We also have house agents as well, and again the hiring fee varies on this, but it's just nice that they've included them for Ash Wastes Nomads with their own 3 different stat lines in here as well, and the same rules for all of the other house agents that you get generically. Now onto the interesting and unique Nomad mechanic here. So those of you that do the Apocrypha Necromunda stuff, which is available on the Warhammer community, they do sort of different scenarios that usually bring something new to the table for Necromunda. There was one, I can't remember the title of it, and it included basically spirits walking or warrior spirits for the Nomads. And there was just a single table, I think of 6, and they've basically expanded on that here. So I have to say, though, off the bat, it's not the best mechanic there is. It has a few problems. It's not as good as the squat one. It's not as good as any of the others, to be honest. It is a bit of a letdown again. It could have been better, but, at least they've expanded it a bit. So you've got lots and lots of choice here. The way that this works is that you pick one of the 4 clans, I suppose. We've got the Barkow Oil Run Stalkers, we've got the Dust Wall Crawlers, the Grey Waste Walkers, and the Lead Sky Seers. So only 4 clans that you can choose from here. In those 4 clans, we've got 6 different warrior spirits, which are pretty cool, like the themes of them and stuff. The way that they work is that at the beginning of the game, you count up how many champions and leaders you've got. You'll always have 1 leader, but you might have 2 or 3 champions. You roll a d6 for each of those. Duplicates still count, and then you associate each one of those dice rolls with the number on the warrior spirit table that you've chosen as your clan, basically. So that's how it works. You then get those to use as one-offs in the game. They are one-offs. You only get to use them once, and once they're done for that game. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the warrior spirits here. What I'll do actually is just pick one from each of the 4 here, and just to sort of highlight it, and you can let me know what you think about this in the comments. So the Bakau Oil Run Stalkers, they're number 2, Zhenhao, the Mutation Spirit. This fighter's body becomes malleable, twisting and reshaping itself as the mutation spirit moves through them. Until this round's end phase, increase both their strength and toughness by 1. It's pretty nice. It's like a tactics card, a bit like a Stim Slug stash, like a mini Stim Slug stash. But, you know, once it's gone, it's gone. That's one of the first ones for the Oil Run Stalkers. Now for the Dust Wall Crawlers, let's pick one here. The Insect Spirit. Drawing upon the spirit of insects, the fighter is surrounded by a maelstrom of insects clogging nearby engines and restricting other fighters' movement. Until this round's end phase, any enemy vehicle that moves within 3 inches of this fighter must make a handling test. If the test is failed, they change their status to stationary and stalled. In addition, all enemy fighters treat the area within 3 inches of this fighter as difficult terrain. Again, it's pretty situational if you're not using it in the Ash Waste. If you are using the Ash Waste, it's not bad. But there you go. I think that one, in fact, that Warrior Spirit thing is slightly more catered towards the Ash Wastes anyway. We've then got the Sungar Grey Waste Walkers, which are the ones we know about most, I suppose. The Life Spirit. Drawing upon the Life Spirit of Necromunda, the fighter's wounds heal and they are filled with fresh energy. This fighter removes all flesh wounds they have suffered and their activation then ends. They may perform no actions. So it's not as good as any of the tactics cards that give your wounds and flesh wounds back because you're using your activation to do it. It's still nice to have. I mean, if you've got 2 flesh wounds, then great, you can heal your flesh wounds, but then that's your turn gone for the game and you haven't done anything else. You know, it is what it is. Let's have a look at the last one here, though. A Lead Sky Seers. We've got the Blade Spirit. The fighter's blades become keener, their razor-sharp edges carving through armor, flesh, and bone with equal ease for the duration of their activation. Any attacks made by this fighter using a weapon with the melee and versatile trait change their AP to -3, unless their AP would be higher, and increase their damage by 1. That's pretty good. I like that one. Again, though, you only get to use it once, but it might make the difference in killing an Ambot or something. So that's pretty cool. So they kind of act like extra tactics cards. It's like having 2 or 3 or 4 extra tactics cards to the mix. It's not bad, but they are just kind of one-offs. So I like the way that it's simple. It's really easy to think about, but it's a shame you can't sort of mix and match. You have to just dedicate yourself to one of these tribes. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments down below. I'm going to explore all of this in full detail in the new and complete Ash Wastes Nomad gang guide, so go check that out if you want to know about all of these after this video. Okay, lastly, we're going to look at the new weapons that not only the Shadar hunters get, but the weapons that we have on the new pets as well. The first one is the Barbed Fangs on the Anthromite Spineworm. They are strength as user, so strength 3, melee, damage 1, no AP, but they have rending. So they're not toxin, they are rending. It's nice, you know, if you hit those 6s, great, you're doing extra damage. It's pretty nice, but I'd rather have toxin on those guys, that's for sure. One thing that is good actually is that all of the weapons you get for the Shadar Hunters are actually in the Shadar Hunter kit, so you don't need any extra things to get here. And there is a Nomad trading post that we're going to go into in a minute, where you can actually upgrade your Shadar Hunters after the fact, you know, mid-campaign, and give them the other close combat weapons and pistols that your Nomads can get as well. So yes, you can get your Chain Lances, Mono Hooks, and Long Blades on your Shadar Hunters, so it's worth thinking before you actually build these guys up to actually maybe include some of those weapons, because honestly, those 3 weapons, the Long Blade, the Mono Hook, and the Chain Lance, are arguably better than most of the weapons you get on your Shadar Hunters here as well, which again is a little bit disappointing, if I'm honest. So first up, we have the Chitin Dagger. These are modeled on these sort of runner-looking guys. They're not very good. They're strength as user, no AP, 1 damage, backstab, and melee and rending. Nothing to write home about there. It's nice to have rending, but they are not that good. We've then got the Chitin Gauntlet, which is the big sort of... looks like, what's that game where you hoof the ball around with like a sort of sling gauntlet thing? You see people in Canada and America doing it. No idea what it's called. let me know in the comments. Anyway, it's one of those. The chitin gauntlet, it's strength +1, similar to an axe. It's -1 AP though, which is pretty good. 1 damage, and it has pulverize. So definitely a lot better than the chitin dagger. Pulverize, -1 AP and strength +1. It's not a bad weapon. It's not a great weapon either, though, unfortunately, and you know it's not that cheap either. We've then got the Hellamite claws, which come on the Unbound Hellamite. They are terrible. They're just strength 3, -1 AP. So the only thing they've got going is -1 AP. Other than that, nothing else. We then have the Insective Knife here, which is just strength as user, -1 AP, chem delivery, and backstab. So that could be interesting if you get into your chems and stuff. But again, most people just want to, if they're going to charge something, they just want to kill it. They don't want to faff around with chems. So in my experience, I would avoid that one. We then have the 3 slightly better weapons. The first one is the Trident, and that is modeled on the guy who's standing there with the sort of insect-looking trident. It's not what I thought it would be. It's a 2-inch versatile weapon though, which is great. It's -1 to hit in close combat. It's strength +1, nice. It's -1 AP, nice. Only 1 damage though, but it does have you know, melee, shock, unwieldy, and versatile. So it's a shame it's unwieldy, but it's great that it's versatile. And shock is very nice on a +1 strength, -1 AP weapon. It's similar to a shock stave basically, but just a slightly different looking version of it. The next one is the Venom Stave. This one's strange because it doesn't have versatile. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to, but it doesn't. The Venom Stave is just a close combat weapon. It's -1 AP. It's pulverize and toxin. So I'm not sure how those two things work, but you know, toxin on the injury roll, I suppose if you roll a flesh wound, you can then do the pulverize thing with it. Toxin with pulverize stacks quite nicely. I quite like that. But I can't figure out in my head just how that works quite yet. I need to get my thinking gear around that one. The last one is my favorite weapon, absolutely, for the Shadow Hunters, and actually the weapon that I would choose most of the time based on what I've seen so far, and that's the Venom Whip. This is, you guessed it, a whip with toxin. So it's 2 inches to hit a versatile range, -1 to hit a close combat, which it should be. It's a whip. No AP on it though, but just toxin and versatile. But 2 inches on a toxin weapon. It's a bit cheaper than the Venom Stave as well. I quite like it. It's nice. I'm going to use that a fair bit. But yeah, the Venom Stave and the Venom Whips, both pretty good. And I'll probably take a couple of tridents in there as well, but I probably would avoid the chitin weapons. Lastly, just quickly, I'm going to talk about the Nomad trading post. Now, this is the same core rules as the rest of the trading posts, as in post-battle, you seek rare equipment and trade. You can do the same here, but you only get access to the Nomad trading post. It is a lot smaller, so you can't get much of the fun gear in Necromunda that you want. There are, however, las guns, shotguns, las pistols, auto pistols, and a couple of other things that you can get here, but sadly you don't get access to any extra heavy weapons or anything like that, or any really cool Imperial or Xenos stuff either. What you can do though, and I mentioned this earlier, is give your Shadow Hunters the mono hooks, the long blades, the chain lances, and the web pistols, which is pretty cool. So you can do that mid-campaign and make them very, very scary with other weapons. So that's worth thinking about as well, and that makes the Shadow Hunters a bit better in my eyes too. But again, I'm not going to go into too much detail in this video. This was really just a highlight of what's in this book. I think the book's a really great book, particularly for the lore, but I'm not as enthusiastic about it as I probably should be. Like with the Squat book, for example, I feel like they got really nicely fleshed out. The Ash Wastes Nomads are really nicely fleshed out if if your arbitrator is keen on letting you do that stuff in the Underhive. I just need to give it a bit more thought in terms of if you can do those special rules in the Underhive, if you can use the Sky Mantles, is there a nerf that needs to be in there as well? I'm not really sure, but if you do take that into consideration and you can use them in the Underhive with those special rules, the Shadow Hunters doing the infiltrate thing, this will be a really fun, really nicely balanced, awesome gang to play, and I'm quite excited about doing some battle reports on that as well. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below, and go and check out my complete, updated Nomad gang guide now. Peace out.